Hi, my name is Amy Dawson. I am a judge in Minnesota in Hennepin County, which includes the city of Minneapolis. For about 3 years, I was on a juvenile assignment, doing about 75% of cases with children in need of protection and services, and the remainder with juvenile delinquency. And now I'm on a family assignment. I'm also a mother and a wife and a gardener and a mountain biker. Of course, I think first of all the young girls around the world and the hardships they must endure and overcome. I also think of my own daughter, and of course, I think about my own childhood. And in saying that, I realize we don't have a word in English for girlhood. We only have boyhood and childhood. It's just a small point, but language is so important. As a girl, I preferred to dress like a boy and play sports that boys played, soccer, ice hockey. I didn't always fit in. Society has a lot of expectations for girls around gender expression, and the roles we are supposed to play as a girl and as a future woman. As a judge in juvenile court, I saw firsthand that the girls caught up in the juvenile delinquency system were disproportionately minorities, Black and Native American here in Minnesota. I also learned that they were disproportionately lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or gender nonconforming. These girls are often nonconforming in their gender expression, gender identity, and sexual orientation. And because they do not conform to heteronormative expectations, they can experience difficulties at home and at school. They're more likely to be homeless, they're more likely to be overly disciplined at school, and they're more likely to end up in the juvenile delinquency proceedings. They're also more likely to have fewer resources than the boys who are in juvenile delinquency proceedings. For me now, as a judge, as a mother, as a wife, the International Day of the Girl Child makes me focus on what I can do to help all girls grow up to be healthy and strong, and on what I can do to improve and change systems so that girls have the opportunity to be their best selves. For me, this means letting each girl be the person she or he or they really are, inside and out. Yes, absolutely. It is important to draw attention to the inequality for girls and women that exists all around the world. Girls have rights too, including the right to food, healthcare, and education, the right to be free from slavery, abuse, sexual exploitation. As a society, we have hopes for every young girl that they may grow to be positive contributors to their communities. For that to happen, each girl needs freedom to be true to herself. That can be especially hard for girls who don't fit neatly into cultural expectations about gender identity, gender expression, or sexual orientation. I hope that as we focus on girls today, we can make room in our minds and in our hearts for transgender girls, non binary youth, and for girls who are gender non-conforming. As difficult as it is for girls the world over, it is even more difficult for children who do not conform to their gender as identified at birth or to other societal and cultural norms such as gender expression and social sexual orientation. Personally, I believe that if we can improve outcomes for transgender girls, for gender nonconforming girls, for non binary youth, and for girls who are lesbian or bisexual, then it will also help us overcome the stereotypes and sexism that continue to oppress girls and women. I think the most important thing that each one of us can do is to begin by examining our own expectations and our biases about what it means to be a girl. We as a society, we start telling girls at a very young age what they must do to conform, how to dress, how to wear their hair, how to play, how to act, how to be. And we start telling them at very young ages that we expect them to grow up and marry a man and have children. All of these messages and expectations, these biases, they're repeated by parents, teachers, other children, and by all types of media. As judges, we can start by understanding that these societal expectations and biases can result in trauma to young girls, girls who don't want to marry a man, who don't want to express themselves in a very conforming feminine way. These traumas hurt even more deeply for children who are intersex, non binary, or transgender. When we think about improving outcomes for LGBTQIA youth, we have to acknowledge the harmful effects that these cultural expectations have, and that they go hand in hand with bullying, abuse, sexual exploitation, and stigmatization. Once we can do that, we can make a commitment to reducing those harms in our courtrooms and in our communities. Every judge I know strives to treat all individuals who appear in their courtrooms with dignity and respect. This is a fundamental aspect of procedural fairness. It's no different for youth. If a youth whose legal name is Jessica wants to be called James or Jazz, then we need to respect that. If a youth wants to use gender neutral pronouns, then we respect that. We do it. We should not, however, make assumptions about what that means, nor should we make assumptions based on how a youth presents themselves. This requires a commitment as a judge to treat each youth with respect as a human being. I like to think that we can all agree that it is important to listen to youth and treat them with respect, because this will help each youth move forward in a positive way. I think this sentiment is captured brilliantly in the UN Convention on Rights of the Child. In Article 40, it speaks about youth who are involved in juvenile delinquency systems. And it says that they should be treated in a manner consistent with the promotion of the child's sense of dignity and worth, which reinforces the child's respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms of others, and which takes into account the child's age and desirability of promoting the child's reintegration and the child's assuming a constructive role in society. If we want every child to grow up with respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, then we must lead by example. The things I've suggested for judges to do, these are simple things that every judge can do simply by deciding to do them. Affecting systems change is much harder, but also must be done. How can we expect a youth to become law abiding, a positive contributor to society, if we don't respect their human rights? And that goes not only in the courtroom, but also when these youth are experiencing services or consequences to which we send them. For example, when we consider an out-of-home placement for a youth, how can we be sure that placement is going to be affirming and supportive for a youth who is lesbian, bisexual, transgender, non-binary, or gender non-conforming? If we tell a youth they must complete substance abuse treatment, how can we be sure that treatment approach is affirming and supportive of all sexual orientations, gender identities, and gender expressions? As a judge, maybe it's your place to ask about this, or to order that placements and services be supportive and affirming of all youth, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. Or maybe you would feel comfortable helping to promote education about these issues. What's important is to consider your sphere of influence. Remember, you have a sphere of influence that exists not only in the courtroom, but also in your family and in your community. So I hope you use that circle of influence to join me in improving outcomes for LGBTQIA youth. Thank you.